Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here. Sorry, again, I know it's been a while, the usual stuff. But I wanted to make a quick video to talk about some of the books I hauled recently. We had a little birthday trip up to Reading because it was Laura's birthday. Very, very low key. We just looked around at a couple bookstores and we went to this Turtle Bay exploration park place, which is, like an animal reserve. We walked across the Sundial Bridge. It was pretty cool. But yeah, we stopped in at a couple stores. I'll leave description. I'll leave links and all that stuff in the description below if you want to know more about them. If you're in the area, support local bookstores. I firmly believe that. In particular, I wanted to shout out Cal's Books, which was a really, really cool place. It was like, we were a little leery about it at first because it was in the back of a storage unit, but it was really, really cool. It was huge, much bigger on the inside than we thought it would, than it looked from the outside. Shelves going up to the ceiling, my favorite type of place, and there was a lot of, vintage stuff. I didn't come away with a whole lot just because, I've been trying to curb a lot of my, book buying habits and, trying to save money and stuff like that. But I did come away with a few things, so I'll just talk about that. First of all, we have some X-Files books here. I haven't really talked about it on this channel before, but I'm a big X-Files fan. I got into it around 2017 when it was still on Netflix, and I've just kind of slowly been working my way through it over the years. It kind of comes in bursts where I watched the first 4 seasons straight through. I took a bit of a break. Then I went from seasons 4 to 7, and now recently I've picked it back up again. And Aaron and I are on season 9, so almost done. And yeah, I love the show. I love the '90s noir, paranoid conspiracy vibes. The shadows and the rain and all that stuff. And there are only about 6 books published in sort of the X-Files series, 7 if you include the novelization of the first movie. And I found a bunch of them at some of the stores, so we'll just talk about it. This is the first one here, Goblins, written by Charles L. Grant. I'm actually almost done with this one. I started reading this on the trip, and I ended up, getting into it. It's a pretty quick read. It's fairly large text. So yeah, I've been reading this, and it's pretty entertaining. It kind of has. It was published right after the second season started, so not a lot of the sort of tropes and stuff had been fully established yet. But it feels like a pretty average Monster of the Week episode, which isn't a bad thing. Charles L. Grant writes with he's got a lot of descriptive power, and the banter between Mulder and Scully is pretty good. So yeah, I've been enjoying this. I've heard a little bit about Charles L. Grant. He's mostly known for his quiet horror books, including a bunch of stuff set in his fictional town of Oxrun Station. I run kind of hot and cold on him. Sometimes I feel like there's a fine line between quiet horror and boring horror, and unfortunately a lot of the Charles L. Grant stuff I've read has been a bit boring, but this is fun. I've been enjoying this. And you can definitely tell he was a fan of the show, based on the acknowledgments and just how it's written. It doesn't feel like a work-for-hire job, which is really cool. And that makes me really interested to read his follow-up book, which is Whirlwind. This was published around end of season 2, beginning of season 3. And then the next one is Ground Zero by Kevin J. Anderson, who I have very mixed feelings about because I read his Batman Superman novel, what was it, Enemies and Allies, 10 years ago, and I hated it. So I'm not too sure about this, but we'll see how it goes. This was from around middle of season 3, I believe, when this came out. And I couldn't find any of the other novelizations, or any of the other novels, like this. But I did find the novelization of the movie. This is The X-Files Fight the Future, which is the subtitle that the X-Files movie had in certain places, or depending on where you found it. This novelization is adapted by Elizabeth Hand, who I've heard a little bit about. She's kind of a relatively well-known horror author. I believe she wrote stuff like Wilding Hall more recently, and that other book that's it's like a tribute to The Haunting, I believe. Let me look that up just to make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah, a Haunting on the Hill, which is her tribute to, or I guess it says here it's a sequel to The Haunting of Hill House. So I'll have to check that out at some point. But yeah, she's been around, on the horror scene. So I'm very interested to see how this goes. I was also very interested to read this novelization because the movie, much like a lot of the show, is very opaque and doesn't really answer or explain a lot of things. And especially with the mythology, as X-Files went on, it got a little bit kind of obtuse and sort of up its own ass. So I'm just curious, like, how do you maintain that in a book, But I guess I'll find out. Oh, and while I'm here, I guess since I've been on an X-Files kick, I'll just talk about this. Again, I'm almost done with this. This is Monsters of the Week: The Complete Critical Companion to the X-Files by Zach Handlen and Emily Todd Vanderwerf. This is based on a series of recaps that they wrote for the AV Club from like 2008 to like 2018 when the reboot came out. The second season of the revival came out, I should say. So yeah, they're just very short, pithy, tongue-in-cheek reviews of each episode with some like little behind-the-scenes things here and there. I'm enjoying it, although I've had to stop because I'm right at the part where we are in the show. I don't want to read ahead or anything. So yeah, I've been enjoying these. It's just very fun. I just love this whole vibe. I mean if you're not into X-Files, like that whole like front cover just really kind of gets it across. It's just very moody, noirish, mysterious. I don't know, just something about it just really hits with me. So yeah, that's been enjoyable. But anyway, back onto the stuff that we bought during the trip. This is Ferocity by Stephen Laws. I know a little bit about Stephen Laws. Come on, there we go. I know a little bit about Stephen Laws. He's a British author who wrote a bunch of like horror paperbacks, especially like in the 80s, I think there were a lot of them. I think he had one about like a haunted train or something like that. I've just heard his name around here and there. But yeah, this is about, something is stalking the Northumberland moors. No one is sure exactly what it is, but something is slaughtering sheep and other livestock. There have been sightings of a big cat, a huge feral creature that has so far managed to elude capture. Some of the locals are terrified, while others scoff that it's only a legend. Still, the killings continue. So, it's about people investigating these mysterious murders. Sounds like it goes into, all the sort of stories of like the big black cats, throughout England and stuff. And it's a leisure horror paperback, if it focuses. Yeah, it's a leisure paperback, and so these are kind of becoming increasingly harder to find, and becoming more collectible. So I try to grab them when I can find them. No idea if this is any good or not, but we'll see. Next, I have The List of Seven by Mark Frost. I picked this up because Mark Frost, I know him as the co-creator and co-writer of much of Twin Peaks. Which I've only seen bits of, but of course, I'm aware of its, cultural influence and stuff. And I was like, that's interesting. I didn't know he was a novelist. And then I opened up this step back art, if you can see, and I was like, oh man, that looks awesome. And then I was reading the back, and it's like a sort of a horror, like historical fiction thing that takes place in London, and it involves real life people like Arthur Conan Doyle and Bram Stoker. And there's like monsters and vampires and stuff from what I can gather. It just sounds really weird and spooky and interesting, and I was reading about it a little bit online, and there's a bunch of like historical illusions. It just seems really like dense and interesting. And again, like that step back art like totally sold me. So yeah, I have no idea if this is any good or not, but we'll see. I'm excited about that. Next we have The Green Knight by Vera Chapman. Some of these still have the Cal's Books stickers on them just because, they're hard to get off. I really just grabbed this because Vera Chapman, she's the author of The King's Demoiselle, which was the basis for Quest for Camelot, which I watched recently with Laura and Nakia. It wasn't very good, but reading about her and the original book intrigued me. It's a lot more serious and dark, and as far as I understand, these go more into like the Arthurian sort of mythology and stuff like that. And she was also a member of the Tolkien Society, so, a very sort of interesting person, it seems like. But I just love the Green Knight story. It's one of my favorite Arthurian legends. I read it in school, and I've just been enamored with it ever since. I still need to see that movie that came out a couple years ago. I heard that was really good, so... yeah, I don't know. I just hope this one keeps all the boy kissing, so we'll see how that turns out. Next, I have some Lee Brackett. This is The Sword of Rhiannon, Cosmic Peril in a Lost World. Focus. There we go. I talked a little bit about Lee Brackett in one of my previous hauls. She was a very well-respected sci-fi author. She co-wrote the original script for Empire Strikes Back. Co-wrote the script for The Big Sleep. Just very, very well-respected, and this is considered kind of one of her masterpieces. This is sort of from what I understand anyway, it's sort of an interplanetary romance novel in the vein of like John Carter of Mars or something like that. Into this lost world plunged Matt Karse, explorer of interplanetary ruins, to find himself inhabiting the body of a mythical god and slated to fight that immortal's battles all over again, this time with the knowledge of Earth's unborn future as his sole scientific secret. So yeah, you don't see a lot of Lee Brackett out in the wild, especially not in these old Ace editions, and it was $2, so I was like, why not? I've heard a lot about this book, been interested in it for a while, so let's do it. And next I have, this is The Fighter's Blade Singer by Keith Francis Strome. This is a Forgotten Realms novel, D&D stuff, that takes place, it's a series, as far as I understand, that's not really connected, like, plot-wise, but it's more thematically connected in that this is all about fighters. The fighter class, so different people who kind of fit into that class in different ways that class can sort of be represented. And Nakia was telling me about this because she was saying the main character in here is a half-orc, I think. And the back of it says, they are the half-bloods, the broken, the unforgiven. They failed themselves and their people. They are outcasts. Then, in the bitter wilds of Rashamen, they receive a desperate plea they alone can answer. If they succeed, it could mean their redemption. But if they fail, a troubled past will be the least of their problems. So, I enjoy a lot of these D&D novels. They're sort of like potato chip reads, popcorn fantasy, which isn't a bad thing. I enjoy just a good sort of rip-roaring fantasy adventure, and I like that this one seemingly focuses on, half-bloods and sort of like non-humans. That's something I always find, interesting with fantasy. I'm tired of just reading about, male fighter, so male human fighter, so... Yeah, this just sounds like a lot of fun. I love bands of, misfits coming together to, save the world and stuff. Sounds fun. We'll see how it is. In this final pile here, I was really happy to find this. I found a copy of Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. Day of the Triffids, of course, is an incredibly famous novel, was turned into a movie, a TV miniseries, a few things about killer alien plants. And I've never read any John Wyndham, surprisingly, and I just recently bought a copy of, I think it was the Midwich Cuckoos. And then I found this at Cal's Books, and you never ever see these in the wild, at least not in my experience. And I just really liked this old Penguin edition with this sort of cartoony drawing of the Triffids on it. It's very, I assume this is 1960s. Let me have a look. Yeah, published in Penguin Books, 1954. So yeah, it's just very like 50s, mid-50s, late 50s, early 60s kind of pop art almost, sort of cartoony. I don't know. I like that. I like how they integrate the purple, or it's the purple. I like how they incorporate the orange, into the art and stuff to kind of tie it into the whole Penguin aesthetic. It's just really cool, and it's one of these like classic sci-fi novels, British sci-fi novels I've always been wanting to read. So yeah, looking forward to that. Another Lee Brackett. This is Eric John Stark, Outlaw of Mars. I talked about one of her other Eric John Stark novels that I bought in my last haul video. That one was from the later series, which doesn't have much connection to this one. This is an expansion of two novellas that were, I think, originally written in the 40s or 50s. And I've heard they're quite different from the original published versions, but seeing as this is basically... a good chunk of the original Eric John Stark sort of story or world or whatever, I figure, I might as well grab it. And again, you don't see Lee Brackett out in the wild much, or at least I don't. And yeah, I just like that old, Del Rey cover. Again, very interplanetary romance, lots of stuff about Mars, very John Carter influenced. So, yeah, hopefully that's fun. Now, next we have Carnival by Elizabeth Bear. This is one of those books that I've run into like so many times, and I always pick it up because I love the title. I'm always interested in carnivals, and that cover art is so striking. And I found it again on this trip, and I was like, man, I'll just buy it. So it's about old Earth, and it's as it says here, it's a clandestine world of ambassador spies. And it's about these two spies, Michelangelo Kusanagi Jones and Vincent Catherinson. They were once a starring team, but ever since a disastrous mission, they have been living separate lives in a universe dominated by a ruthless coalition, one that is about to reunite them. The pair are dispatched to New Amazonia as diplomatic agents. Allegedly, they are to return priceless art. Covertly, they seek to tap its energy supply. But in reality, one has his mind set on treason, and among the extraordinary women of New Amazonia, in a season of festival, betrayal, and disguise, he will find a new ally in a force beyond any that humans have known. So I'm not sure how the Carnival title plays into it. I guess, masks, carnival, that type of thing. But it's, sort of like sci-fi, spies, science fiction type stuff, like Cloak and Dagger. I don't think I've ever read a science fiction novel with that kind of vibe, sort of espionage type things. And it just sounds really cool and interesting, and that cover art's very striking, so I hope it's good. I have a few other Elizabeth Bear novels, so I need to get to some of them. Next we have a World of Darkness book. This is Prince of the City by Keith Herber, a Vampire the Masquerade novel. I've talked before in other videos about my love for the World of Darkness and, Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse and all that. And I'm trying to collect all of the World of Darkness books that I can find. The novels, I mean. This store actually, Cal's Books actually had a few of them, but they knew what they had because they were priced accordingly. Most of them were like $6 to $12, which I can't really justify for these little paperbacks. But I did find this one for about $4.50, I think. This is about Vannevar Thomas, who's the Prince of San Francisco, the Vampire Prince of San Francisco. If you don't know anything about the lore of Vampire the Masquerade, there's the Camarilla, which are the cabal of vampires that sort of maintain the masquerade, which is, the idea that, humans can't know about vampires, the existence of vampires and stuff like that, and every city has, like, a prince, who, like, reports to the Camarilla. This one's about a guy named Vannevar Thomas, who became a vampire at the height of the American Revolution. So yeah, again, actually there's a lot of crossover in World of Darkness and X-Files in terms of, like, the overall vibe, which is one of the reasons I really like it. It's that sort of the urban sprawl, the rain-soaked cities, the neon, just that sense of 90s malaise, I don't know. It's just something that I really enjoy for some reason, and I need to read more of these too. I have another leisure horror paperback here. This is a Graham Masterton book, Night Wars. I just pick up as much Graham Masterton as I can find because he's always a good time. Very famous British horror author, wrote stuff like The Manitou and a few other things. His stuff tends to be very, like, propulsive and pulpy and entertaining and a lot of fun, at its best anyway. He's not always perfect, but when you're pumping him out like he is, you can't win them all. But yeah, this sounded fun. It sounds almost like a horror, like, action fantasy thing almost. They are 5 ordinary people forced to do battle on the most terrifying field imaginable, the landscape of nightmares. They are the Night Warriors, and only they can defeat the evil that has invaded our world through our dreams. Only they would even dare to try. So yeah, about, a group of, like, it's almost like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the Dream Warriors, going into their dreams and fighting this evil force inside of them, and that just sounds like a lot of fun, and, like, there's a lot of opportunity for sort of a crazy, surreal dream action. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then finally, I have these 2 books. This is The Complete History of Jack the Ripper by Philip Sugden. I've actually been looking for this book for a while because I recently watched, last year I should say, I watched Psychoville from the League of Gentlemen guys. And one of the characters on there is obsessed with serial killers, and he's always talking about, Jack the Ripper and stuff. And that just made me think, like, man, I don't really know, like, the facts of the Jack the Ripper case, aside from, like, the basic stuff. About, they were in Whitechapel, he murdered sex workers, and I know about the From Hell letter and all that stuff, but I don't know, like, all the full sort of facts of the case. I don't know the full story. And among sort of my research, this seems to be kind of one of the more well-regarded sort of overviews of the Jack the Ripper case. It comes highly recommended on a lot of sort of Ripperology websites I've found, and I just so happened to find it at this random store in Reading, so I was really happy about that. So yeah, hopefully I'll be educating myself soon. So yeah. And lastly, we have Black/Blue by Belinda McBride. I didn't expect to find any gay novels on this trip, but I did. Actually, Nakia pointed this one out to me. She was going to take it for herself if I didn't want it, but as soon as I saw it was about a gay werewolf, then, I had to snap it up. Lucas Black is a deeply closeted werewolf, and almost more than anything in life, he desires his neighbor, Oliver Blue. Oliver is a vampire who is slowly dying from insomnia. More than anything, he needs Lucas Black and the rich blood that flows through his veins. So yeah, gay vampire and a gay werewolf, in a relationship where they can't have each other, and, I'm all about that. Of course, the cover just looks like a generic romance thing, but what can you do? They always look like that. But yeah, I've never heard of this author, but gay werewolves, So, yeah, we'll see how that is. So yeah, that's about all I had from this trip. Sorry, I know this was a bit of a shorter video than usual, but I just wanted to get something out. As I say, I've been sort of struggling with finishing things, although I feel like things are picking back up with me, getting through the X-Files book and everything. So we'll see how things go. I don't know if I'll do a recent reads, because I have finished a few things. I actually finished this Dr. No, Ian Fleming. I've been getting back into Bond as well, alongside X-Files. Especially with the announcement of, Denis Villeneuve being announced as the new Bond director, so I just thought I would continue with the Flemings. I enjoyed this book. Not my favorite. I think Moonraker is still my favorite, but I love how crazy this one gets compared to the movie, especially in the climax. Bond fights a giant squid, that's all I'll say. So yeah, but I haven't, been reading at my usual pace. And it's just been kind of hard to find the motivation to make videos lately, so that's why I've been so quiet, and I apologize for that. But hopefully you guys enjoy and got something out of this. If you've read any of these books, let me know. Like, where should I start? Any other recommendations? Talk to me about books. I love them. I love books. Let's go. But yeah, until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.